What tools do we need to enhance collaboration? So I've thought about this a lot too. So right now, the problem is that we built an entire information economy on the basis of sharing is good. Doesn't matter what you share, doesn't matter the quality of what you share, sharing is good. So share as much as possible. Then we built an entire economic model on top of it, which says clicks are good. Eyeballs moving towards advertiser content is good. So then we put AI on top of all of that. And we said, okay, optimize. So the AI looked through all the big data problems and it said, if sharing is good and maximizing clicks is good, how you maximize sharing and clicks is through division and anger. So let's optimize the systems in a way that maximize division and anger. That's effectively what's happened with social media. If you share a big article written about the Langland problem, the Langland agenda, and Peter Schultz's latest work on it, the 350-page paper that he just published a few months ago on it. Fascinating thing. It's the unified field theory of math. Big deal. Okay. And there's a lot could be learned there. You'll get 5 clicks. Okay. You and your 5 mathematician friends. And maybe the one accidental click who thought, it was porn or something. If you share something, an article, in fact, this question right up here, did Trump or Biden give us inflation? And you have that as a headline of an article. That polarized, charged, many strong propagandized positions on that particular question, that topic. You share that. Okay. You'll get tons of clicks. So if I'm an AI system, a recommender system, I'm trying to control and curate your view, your dashboard of reality. What am I going to do? Am I going to put the Langland problem in front of your eyes, or am I going to put that headline right there? You put that headline right there. You click on the content. What's going to keep you on the website? And what's going to something make you angry? Either I'm going to take a partisan Trump position or a partisan Biden position and kick the shit out of the other side. So that's the first major problem of collaboration, is the architecture of information is broken. The AI systems are broken. The economic layer of the system is terribly broken. And when you have that, you can make no progress. To make matters worse, there's now a new curation layer that's coming in, which is human guided. It's a mechanical Turk, so it has some AI, but some human judgment, the fact checker. So what's happened is there are political philosophies the people who own the information distribution systems have, mostly left-wing, but political philosophies, and they have decided that it's their job to be the arbiters of truth and the destroyers of hate speech. So what they're doing is they're arbitrarily censoring things. They've decided that ivermectin does not work. Okay, said that. It's not a settled matter in any sense of the word. Billions of people around the world are engaged in taking it, entire countries. And there's a lot of papers published, and it's a big academic discussion. And at least the mechanism of action of ivermectin is now being put into other drugs. That molnupiravir is one. Okay, so despite all of that, if you support that particular drug and say that it's efficacious against COVID, or could be, you will be silenced, or at least get a Chiron that says COVID information. This very video on YouTube probably is going to get it just because I uttered the words. So fact checkers have come in. Now, anybody who disagrees with these fact checkers now thinks the entire institution is delegitimized. And what happens is they lash out. They get more radical, in which case they get deplatformed. And then they get more radical, and it more polarizes people. You see? So if we want to enhance collaboration, we have to take a way, way, way back step and say, okay, first off, how do we optimize these systems for the sharing of curated information? And how do we build tools to assist you in your quest for truth? That's the first question. So you see an article And the article says, pick your favorite politician, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Ronald Reagan, whatever, pick a politician. Okay. This politician, killed puppies when he was 12 and has a fake picture of it. Okay. Or at least apparently a Photoshop picture. Now you just see this article and you say to yourself, okay, is there any cost for me to post this on Facebook, tweet this, these types of things, and immediately react to it as if it's true? No. At the moment, no. So you just propagate it. But what if you had a system where you could self-verify and apply a checklist of things to that piece of information that you have? And that if you did so, there was some economic incentive, like BAT, for example, on Brave. You have this attention token, you get paid to consume. So maybe you can apply these same types of principles to pay to curate. So instead of a fact checker, you have a decentralized, distributed web where before things even get shared, there's some sort of accounting system that benefits you economically. Okay. All right. So that's one component of it. Then the other component is when you share these types of things, are other people willing, when they reshare it, to vouch for it? It's one thing to click like and click retweet, but what if there was a cost to you to retweet something? If you retweeted it, that you would lose value or gain value based upon the overall preponderance of the evidence. And what if there was a marketplace for establishing the truth of something? For example, we thought a lot about a social network with a concept called veracity bonds. The basic idea here is that if you're sharing a piece of information, let's say you're a media agency like CNN, and they write an article about something. Let's say that it turns out what they wrote down was factually wrong. They got the story wrong. Well, what if there's a cost to that? What if when they publish the story, they put aside money, $1 million insurance policy behind that story. And if they get it wrong, they get fined $1 million. They lose that $1 million. Would you trust that story more than some bachelor's degree journalism person who has no knowledge, experience in the domain they're writing about, authoritatively cloaking themselves in the brand of the agency and pushing it out as if it's fact, regardless if it destroys people's lives or not? You see? So you can build these constructs, self-serving tools to verify things. You can chain links of reshares and make every time something is reshared, the people in the web accountable for it. You can create prediction markets for the truth of the information, veracity bonds that follow the information you're seeing. And you can even create bug bounty programs to find holes in arguments. So people could be paid to be critical thinkers as a service. So you have all these old white bearded philosophy people. They sit down and they just tear apart articles all day long. It's kind of like movie reviewers, like Red Letter Media, Mr. Plinkett, these things going through and destroying Star Wars and saying, oh God, let me tell you, everything is wrong about it. People actually watch that. There's a marketplace for people to talk about all the structural problems in movies. That's where we have phrases like super easy, barely an inconvenience. Well, what if you could do the same for news articles? And there could be an elite class of people that's all they do, and they develop a revenue for curating that system. All of these things can be built as a protocol and totally decentralized as an information sharing protocol, an architecture for truth, the veracity of life. And all of these things can be also layered with AI to act as a cognitive mirror, in that it checks against known cognitive biases that we happen to have. Our inability to understand exponential growth, our selection bias, our availability bias, survivor bias. There are thousands of biases that human beings have. And you could go through and pinker your way through it. You could check each and every one of these. And you can use AI to assist you in the curation of the information, just like we have applications like Grammarly that sits in the browser and it checks as you write, and it helps you, it uses natural language processing to help you edit and restructure your emails and other things like that. You can do the exact same thing. Excuse me, the exact same thing for the truthiness of information. So I think that is the key to enhancing collaboration, is get to the core of where are we going wrong with how we share information and interact with each other, And how do we build systems that have better communication patterns? This is going to be a project that I think a huge amount about in 2022. And it's something I'd love to build on a cryptocurrency. And I think Cardano would be perfect for it. This is one of those layer 2 things that once we have enough Cardano infrastructure done, enough crypto infrastructure done, is pivotal. So people often ask, well, are you going to launch your own social network? Or, are you going to launch something to compete with Facebook and Twitter and so forth? I think Jack Dorsey had the right idea. He's left Twitter behind because I couldn't imagine being the boss of a centralized organization that first has a radical ideological agenda. It's beholden to a particular philosophy. And it has a group of employees that are completely comfortable with the idea that they act as basically a minister of propaganda. And there's no innovation. You can't even get verified tweets. I told Jack how to solve the whole giveaway scam problem. Did a video on it. You can't get that kind of technology through that kind of bureaucracy. It's just basically the bulletin board of blue checkmark rage in the system. And so I'm glad he left. And I think that to compete, you don't build another one. You don't replace Twitter with Parler. What you have to do is fundamentally change the way that information spreads and be very cognitive of the neuroscience of the matter. Now, to that end, I have been reading a lot of books on neuroscience, like Richard's The Neuroscience of Intelligence and Scott's Cognitive Neuroscience of Memory, and Jerry Rudy's The Neurobiology of Learning and Memory. So I have been looking into neuroscience because I think there's a huge neuroscience and neurobiology component to these systems. It's not just about technology. It's about human mind and cognition and how do these things connect to the interfaces, the algorithms, and how do you accommodate for the fact that our view of reality is very different from reality itself? And where do you install the mirror that tells you the inconvenient truths? Mirror, mirror on the wall. How do you install something that actually tells you who you really are? And then once you have that done and you get the right game theory behind how information sharing is done, I think you've built something that can kill Facebook and Twitter and these other protocols and prevent us from living in a dystopian, censored society where a Ministry of Information basically controls every single thing you think, see, and read and decides what's legitimate and what's not legitimate. I'm sorry, the debate's not over about the response to COVID or the drugs we should use to treat COVID or human rights in society. Even mask mandates, the debate is not over yet. The science is not settled. And I'm not going to allow a small group of mostly unelected people to decide that we should just remove all human freedom for the next 25 years or 30 years, if not indefinitely and forever. And this is the new normal. Get used to it. Shut the hell up. Get in the corner. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not a doctor. Meanwhile, the people making the policies aren't even real doctors. Vast majority of them never even went to medical school, never practiced medicine. And the doctors who do, if they disagree with the direction we're in, get silenced, deplatformed. That's not right. And this has gone on now for 2 years, and there's no end in sight. It's getting geared up again for Omicron. We don't even ask anymore about the lethality of it and compare it to influenza, which was the benchmark. We never wore a mask. We never shut down society for that. So the question is, at what point does herd immunity and vaccinations take us to a point where this is no longer deadlier than influenza for society? At what point? Because at that point, shouldn't we go back to normal? But we never do because the goalposts keep being moved, and they keep being moved because the people who control the flow of information decide that those goalposts should be moved. And anyone who speaks otherwise gets silenced, probably myself included at some point. And so I think this is imperative that we as a society really, really dig deeply, because you may disagree with me, okay, because you've been so propagandized. Great. But then I ask you, what is the standard? And who gets to decide that? And how do we collectively decide that and build that up as a society? What's your death toll rate? Any of these things. What's your transmissibility? What's your level of lethality? What is the concern? Before we can go back to where we were. Or maybe you don't want to go back to where we were because you think the new normal is better than the old normal. Somehow it's more justice and fair, whatever the fuck that means. You see, until we get the right information sharing architecture, we can't get there because we're too busy at killing the messenger. We're too busy at calling people names. They're saying you're not experienced and you don't have the credentials. You're an idiot. You're whatever. You don't know what you're talking about. We don't even have a proper definition of gain of function anymore because it can just be changed on the fly to prevent certain people from having criminal liability. It's crazy. It's madness. And we're all fatigued. And frankly, there's a social trauma that has been caused by this that is extraordinary. And there's a lack of humanity in the things that have occurred. We've taught an entire generation of children that they should social distance from each other. In Toronto, they're telling kids they shouldn't even speak when they eat lunch because of risk of spreading COVID. We're literally putting masks on children, putting them very far apart from each other and telling them not to speak. Don't believe me? Google the fucking thing. That's happening. And if you don't believe that has enormous trauma to people, you're an idiot. You really are. I mean, honestly, ask yourself how many people who are serial killers and molesters and other people were fucked up as kids. And ask yourself, we institutionalize fucking up children as just one of hundreds of consequences of policy that's happening. What is that going to do in 10 years or 20 years to society and how we treat each other, how we think about each other? And the reason we don't even have this debate is because it's become so political to the extent that this is the way we think. Right side, left side, problem. Which side caused it? There are no sides here. This is a fundamental failure in the way information propagates. It's a fundamental failure in the way we set goalposts. It's a fundamental failure in the way decisions are made. It's a fundamental failure in human rights. And we never, ever hold people accountable because people can hide in the masses or behind the bureaucracy or behind the institution. And even if we do, the people who replace them are held to basically different standards. So it never gets solved. And if we don't solve this question, this is an example. And it's not the end. It's an example of where we're going. And things will only get worse. The control will be dialed up. Lies will continue to become standard. For example, The Economist the other day had a headline saying, most U.S. economists blindsided by inflation. They act as if inflation was just a surprise. They double the money supply. They destroy all the supply chains. And then suddenly prices go up. My God, go figure. Wow. This is like any common sense person would tell you doing that would have bad consequences to prices. It's obvious. But everybody's apparently surprised that it happened. And they published this in The Economist. This is where we're at. Who holds them accountable? No one. The people who are responsible for these decisions are still in power, and they're institutionalizing across the entire world. And they're punishing nations like El Salvador who are trying to opt out and go to a deflationary system because they see the writing on the wall with the inflationary death cult that's being pushed through. So you need to change your information system. It's important.